According to the National Society of Down Syndrome, 1 in 691 babies are born with Down syndrome in the United States. There are 3 types of Down syndrome. It's caused by an extra critical portion of chromosome 21 in all or some of their cells. There are many misconceptions of how individuals live with Down syndrome. While most live a life that is different than what we know, they still live a happy life. I am sure the majority of people have come in contact with a person that has Down syndrome. The National Down Syndrome Society reports 400,000 Americans have Down syndrome and around 6,000 babies are born with Down syndrome in the U.S. each year. These statistics make Down syndrome the most commonly occurring chromosomal condition. Today I will talk about what Down syndrome is, the causes of Down syndrome, and the most common misconceptions of Down syndrome. Let's begin with some general information on Down syndrome. In the Trisomy 21 Causes of Down Syndrome article by O'Connor, Down syndrome was first explained in 1866 and is named after John Langdon Down, the doctor who first identified Down syndrome. Down syndrome occurs when an individual has a full or partial copy of chromosome 21. There are 3 different types of Down syndrome. All 3 types of these occur when there are too many copies of chromosome 21 in the person. Parents can have types of prenatal Down syndrome tests performed in the first and second trimester before the baby is born to diagnose Down syndrome. There is also blood tests that can be performed at birth, and there is no cure for Down syndrome. Although Down syndrome is the most frequently seen chromosomal birth defect, researchers are not completely confident on why Down syndrome develops or the distinct elements that are core contributors. The causes and risk. Most women have babies without birth defects, but the scenario is not the same for all women. According to the Global Down Syndrome Foundation, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Research, about 80% of children who have Down syndrome are born to women younger than 35. The CDC research shows that the chances of having a baby with Down syndrome does increase with age. However, younger women have more babies, so more children with Down syndrome are born to younger mothers. The presence of Down syndrome can be generated by one of the 3 types of abnormal formation of cells associated with chromosome 21. Now that I have covered what Down syndrome is, along with the causes and risk factors, it is time to look at the lives of people with Down syndrome, and there are many misconceptions as how long they live and how they live. Misconception 1 with Down syndrome is the life expectancy. The Down syndrome misconception versus reality article 2015 states the average life expectancy for a person with Down syndrome is nearly 60 years old, while some people with Down syndrome have lived into their 80s. Misconception number 2 comes to sports. The Down syndrome misconception versus reality article 2015 states individuals with Down syndrome have a variety of athletic abilities and levels of agility in the same way that typical people do. All over the world, there are sports teams that include people with Down syndrome, including the Special Olympics. There is a great example in the USA Today article, May 9th, 2013, where the article states, in March, a 15-year-old Oregon boy became the first person with Down syndrome to climb to a base camp on Mount Everest at a height of 17,600 feet. Misconception number 3 is the way people with Down syndrome live and if they're employed. Down syndrome misconception versus reality article 2015 states, an increasing number of adults with Down syndrome in the U.S. are living independently with limited assistance from family members or the state. The article goes on to state that more opportunities are available for education and employment today than ever before. There is another great example of this in the USA Today article, May 9th, 2013, where the article states, many graduate high school, some take college classes, some get married, about 1 in 5 has a job, says pediatrician Kathleen Ostmeyer, medical director of the Texas Children's Hospital for Down Syndrome Clinic. The article goes on to state, on May the 5th, a 36-year-old woman named Karen Gaffney will receive an honorary doctorate from Oregon's University of Portland. University officials believe she may be the first person with Down syndrome to ever receive such a degree. Now that we can identify there are many myths associated with Down syndrome that are not true, but for parents with children who have Down syndrome, the fears can be overwhelming, even if they know the truth. A woman learning that her child has Down syndrome can be a very alarming and troublesome thing. But understanding what Down syndrome is, the causes to help understand this defect, are the main key. This are the main key is not believing all the myths and associated with Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a birth defect that is caused by an extra chromosome 21. The causes and risk factors are not definite, but seem to be associated more with the age of the woman that is bearing the child. Both prenatal and after birth blood work can be administered to diagnose Down syndrome. There is no cure for Down syndrome. Although there is a variety of health impacts Down syndrome can have on one's life, it can be scary. It is very important to identify the myths versus the truth. Down syndrome is a lifelong condition, but it does not mean it's a lifelong prison sentence. As the USA Today article May 9, 2013 states, nearly 99% of people with Down syndrome say they are happy with their lives. 96% say they are happy with the way they look. Sakuto survey found.